So tell us about these Orgone devices.
So Orgone is a type of technology that is good for protecting you from the effects of any electronic devices, computers, Wi-Fi, cell phones, wiring in your house, which puts out electric and magnetic fields. And you can wear one as a pendant, you can keep a piece in your pocket. It's basically three ingredients, three components. It's a resin casting with metal particles and quartz. The resin and the metal absorb energy and attract it into the piece, and the quartz, which is squeezed in the resin, has under pressure, has a charge on it, and that energy then goes through the quartz and is restructured so that it is in a cleaner state and in balance with your body's own energy field. And it has been studied in various places, and the electromagnetic absorption effects been proven in lab studies.
In your own personal studies, right?
Yeah. So I've done all the research and tested these pieces, and have all kinds of testimonials of people who have used them. I use the highest quality materials that I can find, and I'm always working to improve on the technology to enhance with both electromagnetic protection and just general well-being. And because Orgone is just a word for subtle energy, and so it's a device that is creating an energy that's supportive to all living things. It's good for people, it's good for plants and animals. If you have a garden, you can put a piece in your garden. Pets love it. Just keep it near your plants or near your pets, and yeah, it's really good for them. So, and for yourself, you can wear it as a pendant, you can have a leather bracelet, attach a piece to your phone. These are really great to attach to the back of your phone. Some people have what's called a pop socket, and those are little hand holders for the back of the phone, and this is about that same size, so you can always attach it to your phone.
Are you Kenneth?
Yes, I'm Kenneth. I make the Orgone devices. So yeah.
When did the technology come about? Who started making these?
Well, this modern version is kind of a third generation. Orgone is a word that was coined in the early 1900s by a man named Wilhelm Reich. And,
wow, that far back, huh?
Yeah. So his work was a little bit different, but his discoveries and his research led others to take on his work and develop his work in different areas. And in particular, what's modern Orgone devices, some people refer to as Orgonite, which is actually a copyrighted word that's owned by a man named Carl Hans Wells. And so he made the second generation, which is resin and metal particles in combination. And then the third generation, which is what you see here, which is invented by a couple, Don and Carol Croft. And so they discovered that adding the quartz crystals to the resin metal matrix actually not only absorbed energy but also transformed it into a beneficial state. And so that's what makes this the third generation of the technology. Well, I did run into Carol Croft unexpectedly, and she said that she really liked my work, and she thought it was really powerful, and so I appreciate that. So if you see this, Carol, thank you. It's been probably a year or so since I ran into her, but yeah, so that was kind of spontaneous. I just had my stuff on the roadside there at the time, before I had a booth to use. But yeah, so this is my passion. This is what I love doing, just creating things that help people, and whether or not you believe in it doesn't matter, or if you even know about it. You know, some people do. There's a whole movement that people do called gifting, where you can just make a piece of Orgonite and, you know, donate it or bring it and leave it places around town, and it's creating a positive energy field. And even if people don't know about it, it's having its effect. So and then I make larger units called chem busters.
Oh yeah, the chem busters for busting those chems.
And it's generally for, you know, balancing the environment. It's beneficial for all living things, and the larger units specifically for balancing the weather to a certain degree at least, and clearing pollution out of the air. So that's what that's for, and I make those as well.
What got you into making Orgonite? I think, in my opinion, it's a very special breed, particularly when they're using high-quality materials like gold and silver and high-quality crystals like your numite,
Yeah.
and high-quality shungite. A lot of people have never seen high-quality shungite, like the shiny stuff.
Yeah. So this is called noble shungite or type 1, and typically I use it because it's the higher density. It's a 98. I think it's around 98% pure carbon fullerenes, or C60, some people call it.
Is that the same as what folks call carbon 60?
Carbon 60, yeah. There's carbon 60, there's carbon 72. Carbon 60 is more well known, but yeah, fullerenes, or some call it buckyballs. But basically, it's a rare form of carbon mined in Russia. The molecular structure is something like a hollow sphere or a soccer ball shape, and that's the carbon 60. And it's really good at absorbing EMFs on its own, but it works really well with Orgonite. And then here we have some numite, both cut slab and the raw. In the raw piece, you can actually see true numite, which is hard to find, has the labradorescent inclusions in it. The misidentified numite will often have just short, blocky, coppery flecks, and that's from China. But the real numite, which is from western Greenland, originally discovered near the town called Nook. I think if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the two minerals in numite are anthophyllite and gedrite. I may be pronouncing it slightly wrong, but that's basically the
I don't think anyone's going to hold it against you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But anyway, that's numite, and it's really good at absorbing energy. It's very good at shielding at a subtle energy level, and I believe it's believed to be associated with volcanic activity, and that's one volcanic rock and the like are known to have high ormus, or high monatomic gold, which is really good for Orgone devices, so that's one of the reasons I use it.
Are you wearing any Orgonite right now, Kenny?
I always keep a piece on me. Yeah, I think I got a few actually. So this one I just had in my pocket. So this is one of my recent ones. This got 23 karat gold leaf. It's got the monatomic, that brown layer is a monatomic metal, or ormus as it's called, and then there's about 15 different stones in there, from pink Lemurian quartz to the numite, the shungite, rhodozite, garnet. It's a type of garnet. It's got amethyst and kunzite and kyanite, selenite, calcite, black tourmaline, Herkimer quartz, or Herkimer diamonds as they're called. And then this has a little laser cut wood disc, flower of life, which is pretty cool. So
it's very cool.
Yeah. And this one's even a little shinier. You can get a good shot of that one. That one came out really nice. See the gold, and then that last layer is the monatomics with the shungite powder. You can see the black is the shungite. You can even see one of the crystals sticking out a little bit there.
Has Orgonite taken off overseas at all?
I think, well, Orgonite can be found pretty much all over the world now. There's even like Orgonite Africa, and it's in Europe, it's in Asia. I think you could probably find it in pretty much any country. It's still somewhat of a niche, but it's definitely starting to take off. I think it's turning a corner, and there's a lot of energy tools out there, and some work better than others, and some don't, partly because people making them may or may not know how to correctly construct the tools. So sometimes Orgonite gets a little bit of a bad name, especially if you don't really know what you're doing.
Do you know what they call not real Orgonite, like what you have?
What do you mean?
The name is, they call it glitterite.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I've heard different terms, but yeah.
Have you?
So some people
do you know any other ones besides glitterite?
I don't know, but some people will make what they call Orgonite, and it'll just be a resin casting, and maybe they'll just put stones in it, and either no metal at all or just the minimal amount, and that's not really effective because they don't understand the principles involved.
Right, and they're just there is
a science to it, and although there's more to it than what I'm about to say, the basic idea, if you're into the technical, is two things. One is the Piezoelectric Effect, which basically means when you squeeze quartz, it has an electric charge that's polarized, positive on one side negative on the other.
And
the
some
other,
folks might recognize that from like smacking rocks together.
Yeah, you get a spark or a light flash
Or,
in the darkness.
Pickups on acoustic instruments
Exactly.
use piezoelectricity.
Yeah. So quartz watches and things. So for timing. So, and then the other principle, which is lesser known in physics, that's related to this, it's not the only principle involved, but it's a basic one that you can look up, is called the Casimir effect. And it's basically the idea that there's an energy or pressure created between two plates of metal, or two particles of metal that are separated by a small space. And so that's basically what is involved in having the resin with the metal mixed in, especially the metallic powder. When you have the metallic powder mixed in with the resin, it creates all these little metal bits that are separated by a tiny amount of resin, and that creates, that kind of traps or absorbs that energy and creates that pressure, that push-pull that's known in the Casimir effect. So there's an aspect of it that is traditional physics, and then there's an aspect that's not really traditional physics but is understood in certain circles. So that's at least some kind of technical that I can give you if you want that. And then there's more research on my website.
I overheard you explaining to a woman today that there is a experiment with the freezer that anyone can do to kind of to be able to see the medicine in these.
Orgone water and ice experiment. So basically what you do, as a simple way to test the device and to show the energy that these pieces create, is you just take 2 glasses of water. As kind of a scientific experiment, you take 1 glass of water by itself, no Orgone device, and you put the water, the glass of water, in your freezer, and you let it sit until it freezes solid. Take it out, look at it, you can observe how the pattern looks. And then do the same thing with the other glass, but this time sit the glass on top of a piece of Orgonite, especially a flat one where it'll easily rest on top. Put both of those in the freezer and let that freeze solid. And then when you take the glass out that's been sitting on the Orgonite, and these pictures are on my website too, but others have done the experiment countless times. You can find it. You just Google image Orgone water ice experiment. Anyway, so when you take the glass out, I don't have one right now, but you can look it up. When you take the glass out, the water, instead of having a random pattern of crystallization and cracks and bubbles, it's now going to have this coherent, what almost looks like a cone or a spiral shape going up through the center of the water, through the ice, right above where the Orgone piece was. So basically the energy that's being given off by the Orgone piece is now, it's organizing, it's making the crystallization coherent. So the way the ice forms is no longer random. It has this geometric pattern.
Much like the same effects you would get for praying over your water and freezing it.
Yeah, like the Masaru Emoto water experiments.
The proof is in the pudding, and I guess in this case it's in the water.
It's in the water. And so, so the reason this is a great experiment is it's something that pretty much anyone can do. All you need is a piece of Orgonite. Keep the Orgonite away from the first glass of water so that you don't spoil your control test of the water. Have a comparison of the water without Orgonite. And it's really simple to do. So you can see, because these are not powered pieces, so you may not notice or feel anything initially, depending on how sensitive you are, but you can see that there's actually energy being given off by these pieces, and the water test is the proof of that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans for helping to spread the medicine, or any new designs you're going to be coming out with in the future?
I'm working on some different things. The thing I've been doing recently is different shapes and ratios of pyramids, and eventually I'm going to make my own molds and do custom stuff like that. So that's the long-term goal. I'm always researching different materials and different methods of making the best Orgone devices I can, and so so that's the plan right now. And yeah, I just love doing this, and I also believe in spreading the knowledge. So I believe that just how I learned from doing research, I want to share the information with anyone else who wants to make the piece themselves, make Orgone devices. So so I don't make it a secret. It's not proprietary information, because I think that's what's going to help the world the most, is making the all the information available.
Absolutely. Complete transparency. We all get on the same level, and we all work together to make everything better.
Yeah. So if someone else wants to go out there and do it and make their own and whatever, that's fine. If they want to, if they don't feel like making their own and they'd like to get a piece from me or someone else who knows how to properly construct it, that's done the work like I have, then they can do that too. But that's why I do what I do.
It's a blessing.
Trying to make a positive impact in the world.
We're all here to make money, but if you don't mind me saying, I think
there's nothing wrong with abundance if it's done with the right intention.
Oh, absolutely. But definitely, it takes a very special person, in my opinion, to make this type of medicine. This is dedication, and you're not making the glitter right.
Like Orgonite yourself, you want to have an equal mixture of metal and quartz in your resin, and you can use pretty much any kind of metal. The type of resin does matter because you want to make sure the resin shrinks enough to squeeze the quartz when it cures. And the only kind of metal that I would say I might not use would be aluminum, but it's not critical. You can use aluminum, but there are, as far as subtle energy goes, aluminum is not the best in my experience. I know a lot of people use it and they might disagree with that, and that's fine. But if there were, just for abundance of caution, if you were to avoid a particular type of metal in your own Orgone piece, I would say it might be aluminum, so that's one I don't use. But again, it doesn't mean that you can't use it. And then the resin, I would say, would have to be either a type of resin like fiberglass resin or a polyester resin, because the soy resin and the epoxies don't really shrink enough, in my experience, to get enough pressure on the quartz.
Which is important for the piezoelectricity.
Yeah.
See, that is some very valuable information for those who are interested in making Orgonite. A lot of folks think they need to buy the medical casting resins, and perhaps that would be better. And
right. Now, like for example, a lot of people use soy resin because it has a really nice finish.
Excuse me.
If you want to do a piece yourself, you can use the resin like I was talking about, the polyester or the fiberglass, but then coat it with soy if you so choose, or some other type of resin that you want to get that nice finish, and that's fine too. But I wouldn't use it as the main casting because it won't really shrink quite enough. It has some shrinkage, some compression on the crystal, but I find it doesn't work as well.
In your experience?
Yeah, in my experience.
And this gentleman definitely has experience.
And I'm always working to improve. You know, I think that the best teacher is one who's always willing to learn too. So I don't claim to know it all. I don't claim to have it all figured out. Life is always a learning process, and I'm always further developing this and trying to improve on it. So you know, and I've learned from a lot of people to bring me to where I'm at today.
Do you do commissions or custom pieces?
I can do custom work. Yeah, absolutely.
And you repair Orgonite as well? I
can if need be. Yeah, if a piece breaks or is damaged, typically small damage is not crucial. So if a chip breaks off the edge, the way you can tell if it's a problem is if the quartz crystal is still intact. If the quartz falls out, then it could be an issue as far as effectiveness. But if it's just a chip or something, the only thing you might want to be cautious of is the metal shavings. If they're sticking out, they might be sharp. You want to avoid touching that because it could cut you. So just either send that to me, or if you have a workshop and you have proper protective equipment, you can file it down and either recast it, or I can recast it for you.
If you don't mind me asking, I see these. What's up with the shape? It's a beautiful shape.
Oh yeah, that's typically known as a triskelion. It's often attributed to being like a Celtic symbol, or from the area around Ireland. But it's actually means a lot of things to different cultures. But I like that shape, and it seems to have a certain energetic signature to it that's pretty interesting, pretty powerful. And that would be more of that shape you're holding there. That's more like a Vesica Pisces, and it's basically the intersection of two circles. It's also one of what they would call the petals of the flower of life pattern, which is also in that piece.
Oh, fantastic!
So it's like a fractal of itself there. large and the small. Another thing of recommendation is don't put Orgonite in direct contact with food or water that you're going to ingest. It's meant to be an energetic effect, so you keep it near a piece, but don't put it in direct contact. And also, for any piece that you have, typically try to keep it in a cool, dry place. The personal pieces I make, I try to give them an extra coating of another resin so that they minimize tackiness. So like if a piece gets a little too hot, it can get a little sticky. It won't affect its functioning, but it might stick to whatever it's in contact with, like
or
cloth
in your pocket.
or fiber. Yeah, and get a little dirty, so it can tarnish the look of it. But the personal pieces I do coat for the most part to minimize that. But you can always have that finish redone if you need to. So yeah, keep it cool and dry. You know, don't expose it to like direct sun for long periods of time, or keep it soaking in water because it'll change the it'll discolor the resin. Yeah. And now we're gonna have 5G soon, which is, you know, it's so new. I don't know all the effects that's gonna have. But
smart meters.
It's disturbing. Yeah. Yeah. Smart meters, technically known as an AMI meter. And not just because they're wireless that makes them a problem, but because of the power supply, the type of power supply. They're not certified by Underwriters Labs, so they're pretty dangerous, and that's a controversial whole long subject.
That's another 25-minute episode of its own.
But basically, avoid smart meters if you can, or AMI meters. Go to the mechanical, rotating wheel analog meters if you can.
A lot of folks, a lot of manufacturers and electric companies are lying and saying their meters are not smart meters when in fact they absolutely are.
Right. Well, it's a word game. It's like a shell game with terminology. So they'll call it one thing when they release it, and then when there's concern over the technology, then they say, well, it's not a smart meter. It's something else.
It's not a Kleenex. It's a Great Value brand tissue.
Right. So it's just a word game. But basically, meters that are digital, electrical meters, and soon water meters, and meters that are either transmitting or non-transmitting digital meters. Even the non-transmitting ones have a problem because they're not certified by UL. They have a problem with these power supplies, what's called a switching mode power supply, and they're not a safe type of technology. The dirty electricity from a switch mode power supply is harmful.
Jeez Louise.
Anyway, that's another subject.
Thank you, Ken, for letting me eat up the rest of your day. Yeah. We're both here at the Piezoelectric Park. I gotta use the bathroom like no tomorrow. I don't know about you. You've been here all day.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Ken, it's been a pleasure to interview you, my friend. I promised this man we were gonna do it early in the morning when we were bright-eyed, and
now it's like 6 o'clock.
Yes, but this man's out of here.
All right.
It's such a pleasure to have you, Ken.
As the sun is setting in the cloudy sky there, we're gonna wrap
I'm gonna miss you, my friend.
I'm sure we'll see each other.
Hopefully
soon.
we get together in September for the Denver show.
We'll see. Yeah, hope so.
Love you, brother.
Take care.